Starship Roan Roper off for another day of broadcast insulin. Oh, golly. Well, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know. There's so much.
Well, can I just start off by saying I just got back from the pawn shop, bro, and I traded 5 rare and valuable and slightly or maybe even very dangerous coins for a moldy, questionable dollar bill. Was that a good deal? Did I make a good deal?
I don't think you did.
Did I make a metaphor?
I think you just made
Is that
a
an
metaphor.
analogy of some sort?
That is. And to talk about this, it's very interesting. There's an argument that is being made in legal circles around the United States of America that the president's swap of the 5 high-value target Taliban at Guantanamo for the one guy who many people believe deserted his post because he was sick and tired of being there and then got captured by the Taliban and held these last number of years. Mm-hmm. By making that trade, the president actually broke the law. Not because the trade was a bad one, because then there would be a lot of Cubs general managers that would go to prison.
Theo Epstein.
This is illegal for this reason. Andrew McCarthy is with us, former chief assistant U.S. attorney in New York. He was the man behind the prosecution of the blind cleric in the first World Trade Center attempt.
Absolutely.
And attack, I should say. And Andrew, thank you so much for being with us. What does make this illegal?
Well, the major thing that people are talking about now is this statute which required Obama to give Congress 30 days notice and some other information about the transfer. I happen to think that is a red herring of an issue, and I'm about as opposed to this thing as you can get. There's no question that he violated the statute, and I think there's no question about why he violated the statute. The fact is that as we hear the well of protest from the public and from Congress, if he had given 30 days notice, the swap would never have happened. So that's why he did it. But the important thing here is not this statute, which frankly is of dubious constitutionality. It's the fact that the president, who is the commander in chief, under circumstances where we still have Americans in harm's way in the battlefields of Afghanistan, has replenished the enemy in wartime at a time when the Taliban are still conducting offensive terrorist operations against the United States. That's the thing that ought to be grabbing people's attention, not this, 30-day notice provision, which to me is, it's
not going to go anywhere.
Kind of the shiny object in the debate.
Right, and because it's clearly a violation of it, but if it were taking up what you're saying is they're taking up the chain, then it would not, it may not pass muster, is your point.
Mr. McCarthy, from what you're describing, is this something that somebody could conceivably bring articles of impeachment against the president?
Yeah, I think it could, and, that's the subject of a book that I have out today called Faithless Execution, which is about presidential lawlessness and the standards for impeachment. But again, I think, the reason that this is an impeachable offense is because it's an outrageous dereliction of duty for the commander-in-chief to replenish the enemy and essentially help it conduct offensive operations against our people in harm's way, who, by the way, the president is also hamstringing with battlefield rules of engagement that make it very difficult for them to defend themselves.
Let me ask you.
I really think that the 30-day notice thing is a kind of a footnote to all of that.
All right, let me ask you this question. If there is another legal question here that's on the table, to me, it is this, that by bartering with Guantanamo Bay prisoners, he is changing their legal status from enemy combatant to prisoner of war. If he does that, doesn't that change exactly how Guantanamo can and should operate?
Well, they don't qualify as prisoners of war. He's changing their status because he's basically extraditing them to another country where they'll be in the functional control of the Taliban, although the ostensible control of Qatar. But it doesn't change. They're not prisoners of war. They're unlawful enemy combatants because they conduct their operations outside the laws and customs of war. So I don't think the point is not the change in legal status from unlawful combatant to prisoner of war. It's that it's the change in status from detainee to active jihadists killing Americans in the battlefield.
So you don't think that this will actually work its way toward some sort of operational change for what happens at Guantanamo?
No, I think that what it will do in terms of Guantanamo, and I think you're quite correct to be concerned about this, is that, this is the master plan now to close Gitmo. He couldn't do it the way he wanted to at the beginning because the public would have went crazy, and in fact did go crazy. So what he's doing is, slowly, gradually letting people out. And at this point, the bar is very high, because if you let these guys out, how can you protest without letting anybody else out? The next thing you know, we'll have Khalid Sheikh Mohammed going back to the Taliban.
Right. I mean, and that becomes a big question. As a matter of fact, there have been now requests. Cuba has just popped up, and they're asking for a trade. They have an American in prison down there for acts against the revolution, or whatever their particular espionage charges are. And there's a couple of guys, I think as many as 5 Cuban spies in prison here in the United States, and they would like to start to negotiate with us. And now all of a sudden we're in that business. All of a sudden we became France overnight. How did that happen?
Yeah, and the next thing you know, we'll not only be friends, we'll be friends with a Cubs overlay. Maybe there'll be a spy to be named later that they can throw into the deal as well. Right? Well, look, the worst part of this, not to be flip about it, is you're putting a price on the head of every American who serves in a dangerous capacity overseas, because you're basically signaling to all the people who want to make war on the United States, all the jihadists who see themselves as at war with the United States, that there's real percentage in kidnapping and capturing Americans. You can hold them for concessions. And, that's why we don't negotiate with terrorist organizations. It's why we don't engage in these kinds of swaps while the war is still going on. And it's just a very, very foolish thing to do.
Andrew McCarthy, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney in New York, and he's got a new book out. Faithless Execution is the name of it, building the political case for Obama's impeachment. Thanks very much, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
All
Bye.
right. Back with your thoughts on this after this. Rokon and Richard Roper, or whatever that guy just said. Chicago's most anticipated street festival, 3 days of music, fun, and pork. And I'm using that as a noun, not a verb. 89 WLS welcomes Rib Fest Chicago this weekend, featuring the stages of top local, national, and local musical acts. That's what I meant to say. And 50,000 pounds of pork. 50,000 pounds of pork.
That's what Rob Ford's calling his mayoral campaign, his re-election campaign.
25 tons of pork. Get more information at the events page at WLSAM.com. All right. To the phones we go, 591-8900. You've heard it. Everybody is scratching their heads. No one seems to be able to answer the question of why it is that this trade was made for the one American, 5 Taliban, and the one American who's now in a hospital in Germany, at Landstuhl in Germany.
They always end up at that hospital in Germany on the way back, don't they?
Yes, they do. And I do that, too, when I'm traveling.
Yeah, you also you have your own bed at Landstuhl and like a locker, like people have country clubs or health clubs.
I do. Yeah. I do. And so this is, he's there, he's resting comfortably. His family says they haven't even talked to him yet because they don't want to screw up his re-immersion. If I were them, I wouldn't talk to him, period. Because there's some real questions. Now Fox News is reporting that there actually is a note that he left before he disappeared. In the moments before he disappeared, he left a note behind talking about his disillusionment with the United States and his position in the U.S. military.
Oh, boy.
That's pretty bad right there.
Well, the parents are probably trying to figure out, too, like if they have him come back home, he might not be the kind of guy where you'd be like, okay, you watch the dog. We're going to be gone for a while. Because then he might just wander off. Well, do you give up 5 high-value targets for a guy that now public sentiment is going to require you to court-martial? We're at this point, and we know we're going to get all the facts, and that's how it works in this country. He'll get a chance to tell his story, but we're reasonably certain he didn't abandon his post to chase down Al-Qaeda that he saw out there. I'm going to get those guys! Yeah, well, they got him. Yeah, and they got him. So the amazing thing to me, Ro, is when you're talking about a president well into his second term, and obviously some advisors with a lot of experience, how could they possibly not have seen what a disaster this would have been once they did it, how this would have played to the public?
I've been wondering the exact same thing.
That's the amazing thing.
What was that meeting like? You always see this in the movies, that meeting in the Oval Office where they're all sitting around, they sit around the coffee table. President doesn't sit behind the desk. He comes, he sits in one of those comfy chairs around the coffee table, and they all knock things around. And there's some lawyer. There's got to be some counsel who says, this is not going to be illegal because it's unconstitutional, this 30-day requirement, because it's not separation of powers. The Separation of Powers Act doesn't apply to this, blah, 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 blah. There's some lawyer giving him some sort of advice, right or wrong, because he's got to understand that on the very face of what he's doing is a violation of the Separation of Powers Act, at least under the current rules and regulations, right? Because there's an actual piece of law.
They need like those spin doctors, like your friends that handle all these highfalutin celebs when they get into trouble. Say, what are you doing?
Oh, I need that guy.
Like, how is this going to play? I mean, if this were Lee Daniels, the butler, if the butler had still been butlering, he would have dropped the silver tray overhearing this. And the president was like, what? Mr. President, this sounds really stupid to me.
You can't do that, Mr. President. No. Let the other guys out of the room. Let me tell you how Nixon handled this.
The Cubs traded Lou Brock when he was a rookie. Well, a bunch of guys who sucked.
Brent, you're on WLS. Hello, Brent.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Is there any way that this could be some kind of tactic by the administration or the military to put a kind of our own version of a sleeper with a tracking device back into the field, or back, 5 times back into the field, and so we can get targetable events?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. There may be some folks over at the CIA who look at this, and the Pentagon, who look at what has occurred here as a bit of folly. And my guess is at the CIA, you're going to have guys who are going to make it their business to make sure they know where these people are. As a matter of fact, and other people that have been released from Guantanamo, and there have been a number over the years, and in those cases, those people have been tracked back to, in some cases, action in the field, right?
Beautiful.
And so when they do get tracked back to action in the field, it's often after something else has happened. For example, the attempted Northwest Airlines bombing plot, right? Remember the underwear bomber?
I do.
That 2 of those guys who were the bomb maker, with the assistants to the bomb maker, because that was that Al-Asiri guy who was the bomb maker in that, and he screwed that up, were originally tenants at Guantanamo. Mm-hmm. Now, they got all the way through all of that and then ended up there, and no one, the only reason that thing didn't blow up over Detroit is because the guy didn't do it right.
Yep.
So even if the idea is to put sleepers out there and be able to track them and hope, it's nice to think that, and you hope that the other people, the Taliban, may think these guys might be sleepers and attracting the attention of the United States, but who knows? This whole thing.
Trying again with another, because they failed at Fast and Furious, with tracking guns in New Mexico with the cartels. Maybe they got it right this time, and hey, we're going to get it right this time. We'll show America.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, this time for sure.
Yeah,
all right.
We got it.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
9. See, I was thinking it's so funny because in the shower this morning I was thinking the exact same thing that
you were just thinking about in the shower.
Yeah, I was. This is what I thought about in the shower. I was thinking about that meeting at the Oval Office, and we're all sitting around in a circle, and I'm thinking, but what if the guy who gives him the advice to do this is the guy who finished last in his class in advice giving to the president? What do you call that guy? A presidential advisor, even though he finished last in his class. Yeah. Because there's nothing that seems logical here, and you don't hear. Often when you have a situation like this, you hear other politicians jumping in and go, who may have access to information about this, including congressional leaders, who are going, well, you got to understand, there's a reason we did it, and trying to calm people. But he didn't go to Congress.
Well, even if he picked up the phone and called one of his pals, Mr. Clinton, for example. What? You're going to do what?
I think it's more likely to call Bill Ayers on this.
Bill Ayers, maybe? I don't know.
Hate to get all Hannity on
but I mean, call anybody.
But,
Hillary Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, the ghost of the Clinton's dog.
I know.
Any of them would have said, "What are you doing?"
Is Buddy dead?
I think Buddy's gone.
Oh God. Now, what? Spoiler alert. Did you have to tell me that now?
Jimmy Carter, he could have called.
Right. Even
Have
Jimmy
you
Carter.
seen Argo? I want you to rent Argo.
Right. Oh, man. All right. Coming up on the program, the very important things here. Stand by. Let me tell you what they are. Oh, this is interesting. Did you see, speaking of the president, there's talk he wants to move out of Chicago when he gets back. The old Obama place might go up for sale.
How about that?
We'll explain that.